George Foreman met a lot of things to a lot of different people over the years, and there's been a lot of change in persona because I followed his career. I covered it for decades, and let me tell you something. Big George Foreman, probably one of the most underrated heavyweights of all time, and that's strange to say, him being a heavyweight champion. But the triumphant of him and Ali and Frazier, you'll never see that again. Three major heavyweights, all three that were heavyweight champion, and Frazier could not compete with Foreman, while Foreman had heavy difficulty with Ali. And of course, we all know he passed away in recent hours, but I want to talk about my personal experience, what I seen with Foreman. Now, when Foreman came up, he was an Olympic hero. He 68 Mexico Olympics, in the midst of all the Black Power rage, which was justified. He was an American hero. When he won his match for his medal, he had, I think, one or two American flags, mini American flags in the ring with him, which started a new trend. You didn't really see that much amongst people with the little mini flags, but as soon as Foreman done it, it became big. Now, when Foreman started his pro career, his big victory, of course, was against Young-Foreman, and he drew a lot of recognition. Now, George's son Mitch, he's a friend of mine, and he told me, he said that his father really had no indication how Foreman hit so hard. Like, in Chuvalo, it was a TKO. He stopped the fight, but Foreman at the time, he had punches that would damage anybody, and although he didn't knock out Chuvalo, it sent a message to everybody in the division that this is a comer. Now, with several key matches that he was victorious in, he eventually fought Joe Frazier in probably the biggest massacre in boxing history. I think Frazier was down more than a half dozen times, and when he first went down, Howard Cosell was brought to another level as an announcer when he started yelling, "Down goes Frazier." So technically, he gave more support to Cosell just by knocking out Frazier, and made Cosell into a more iconic announcer because of the call. Now, when Foreman became champion, there was several key fights, but the Zaire, the big fight against Ali, where he got injured early on, and the bout was delayed. Foreman entered a fight when every indication was going to knock out Ali, but Ali had devised a strategy called a rope-a-dope that would stop Foreman in his tracks. And Angelo Dundee didn't want Ali to do that, but Ali was sort of George Plimpton had rolled him. He was going so far back on the ropes that the ropes were kind of loose. Foreman just wail away, and by the 8th round, Foreman had nothing left, and Ali just turned him around during a sequence in the corner and knocked out Foreman. So that's another thing. He taught fighters not to overuse their power in a match, or you will burn yourself out. So from then on, boxers were using this example of George Foreman losing his power. Now, George Foreman, obviously a black man fighting a black man in Zaire, and a lot of the fans of the documentary We Were Kings note the fact a lot of people in Zaire had no indication George Foreman was black. Now, from then on, Foreman had a weird situation outside the title. You had that famous fight against Ron Lyle when both of them were knocked down left and right in a ABC Fight of the Week, and that changed the game again because the wild world of sports, boxing and NBC fights, it got more prominence because him and Ron Lyle almost killed each other. Now, he eventually lost to Jimmy Young, a guy who lost to Ali previously for the title. And when he went into the shower, I guess he had a connection with God that, and he said that at 100 Huntley Street in Canada to David Maines. He believed that God came to him and, rebaptized him in the blood of the Lamb. He became a born-again Christian. Now, out of the system for a lot of years, literally almost, 10 years, he decided to make a comeback. Now, a lot of people said at his age, he was in his early to mid 40s, that Foreman wouldn't last. And all of a sudden, he takes on Michael Moore in 1994 in a fight that's just been considered maybe a tune-up for Michael Moore. And what happens? He knocks out Michael Moore. He changed the game again because the older fighter was not respected in boxing, just say to a tomato can, but it extended the careers of a lot of people, including James Toney, Roy Jones, Larry Holmes. Mike Tyson came back at an advanced age. So and Foreman was basically a good guy at this time, where he was big bad George. For all those years, he came back. Now, what was kind of weird, ladies and gentlemen, while he was champion, the George Foreman Grill, he changed another genre too. Celebrity endorsements for what they call TV ads or TV commercials, like the 30-minute ads. And Jack LaLanne and everybody else that got into that type of genre owe a lot to George Foreman. Now, he tried TV, it didn't work, and the recent movie on his life, although a little bit tepid, kind of puts it all together. To me, George Foreman is a top 10 heavyweight boxer of all time. But the problem is his style was all power, and he wasn't what he called like an Ali, a butterfly fighter. He wouldn't dance around and hit you. But George Foreman-Frazier said getting hit by George Foreman was getting hit by a lightning bolt. Now, Ali has said that Frazier was a harder hitter than Foreman, and a lot of people think that Ernie Shavers was a harder hitter too. But the amount of fighters that went down, especially when Foreman knocked out Ken Norton, almost fucking killed him in these title defense after he bet Frazier. But when you go down to it, just like a cat has 9 lives, he had so many different lives in the sport, his personal life. He went from kind of a villain in 74 to probably one of the most beloved athletes of all time within a decade or 15 years. So what I'll miss the most about George Foreman is the fact is George Foreman. There's only one George Foreman. There will always be only one George Foreman. A lot of people basically said they made fun of him that he was making a comeback. And my dear departed dad, who was a big fan, he said, you watch him. If he gets the right fighter at the right time, the 3 punches combination would get him. When George became a slower fighter, he became more dangerous because the hammer of Thor would come down. But I grew up in an era, ladies and gentlemen, with George Foreman as being the litmus test of power in the heavyweight division. And like I said, and that era of boxing is way gone. Boxing in 2025 is nothing compared with George Foreman and Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield and all the good heavyweights, Razor Ruddock, were around in that East Championship era of the 90s, Tommy Morrison, everybody else. George made boxing, he kept boxing going, and as soon as he retired or faded away, that was the fate of boxing. So George, rest in peace. Up in heaven, you can show Peter how to run the George Foreman Grill. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a chance, take a look at George Foreman's knockouts, and don't go to the fridge. Only Mike Tyson was as intense in his knockouts. And like I said, I look at the Frazier and Norton fights. Holy frig, ladies and gentlemen. What an accuracy. But the problem is with Ali, it literally led to Ali developing Parkinson's syndrome. Foreman basically didn't kill him right away, and Frazier didn't kill him right away, but he felt it by the early 80s. But Foreman, again, what an athlete. Again, a top 10 heavyweight of all time. Maybe top 5 you look at it, because there's a debate like Jack Johnson and Dempsey and Lewis and all that. But him and Ernie Shavers, what hitters in the division. So ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here, we're a boxing tributes. Let us know in a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.